Hello internet friends, and welcome to the Legion second pass look at the new Protection Warrior. So I am still a little gnome, because I do all my testing on the same class race combination of course when I am doing it all. However, the gnome racial, as we talked about on Fury Warrior's video as a short side as we get started here, is still really good, but the new human racial, the human spirit, might actually scale better into the late game. I hate the whole argument myself. I really don't like questions like, what race should I go with this spec? I wish Blizzard would remove all those stupid DPS racials. They're so dumb because you should want to play a certain class with a certain race because you like how it looks, not because of the weird innate 2% extra DPS you can pull out because of some, it's so frustrating. But we'll see how that works out in the future, of course. Also, in this video, Protection Warriors, as always, in the video description box below, there are ways to support the channel here. There are relevant links to the VOD, as well as the entire testing stream, and the notes, and the bug report, all that good stuff down below. But in my notes specifically, there are links to 3 different parts of threads, either MMO Champion or 2 on the Blizzard official forums, asking questions to get confirmation about things and theory crafting notes from blue posts or from other predominant math heads for your class theory crafters, math crafters, etc. And they are finding out things that are not really easy to talk about in this video because we talked about some things on the testing stream for about an hour and a half, Ignore Pain being the main culprit here. So if you want more information, check out the video description box below for my notes and then the forum threads therein. So anyway, Protection Warrior, let's see what we got going on here. Go over to your passives first. We'll stand here and hang out as a little gnome. He's so deadly. Look at that mustache. Oh, we went into his head there real quick. So you have Critical Block, which increases your block chance by a flat amount. It also increases your chance to critically block. Blocking an attack is a 30% reduction in incoming damage. A critical block, which the only way you can critically block is if a block were to happen, then also rolls that additional 18% based on your gear right now. It'll block 60% of that incoming damage, which will only be auto attacks or special physical attacks that are able to be blocked. Some boss abilities like a Mortal Strike-ish kind of thing, or like a Saber Lash ability can't really be blocked. It depends on the ability. Normally the Dungeon Journal will say what can and can't be. And it also increases your attack power by 12%, which, just to start off early, I'm going to go right over here to your main bread and butter defensive abilities now, is your new one is called Ignore Pain. I bring that up because Ignore Pain's shielding maximum amount is based on your max HP. But the shielding amount is based on your attack power. So your mastery, increasing your attack power, directly implicates your shielding amount from Ignore Pain. But then your HP pool gives you how high you can stack your Ignore Pain, which roughly seems to be about, let's go to my notes, about 40% of your max HP. It's like 44 point something or whatever. I don't know. There were numbers and math and theories and things and formulas in chat when I was testing. But then there's also this weird, like, if you're a Protection Warrior, you only get rage from being attacked or from certain abilities that grant rage. So there is this big formula about damage per, or rage per damage taken. And in a way, actually, as you gain more HP, you actually lose that percentage. Roughly, without getting crazy into math, it's 1 rage point per 2% of your HP that you've lost. So a larger boss hit will grant you more rage. Smaller boss hits grant you less rage. Now that comes into your next active mitigation, which is Shield Block, and the blocking effect in total. When you block damage, you take less to your face. Damage for the Protection Warrior is similar to how a Brewmaster Monk works. So Brewmasters, for example, they go in a certain pattern. That goes like the actual damage coming in first, and then it goes into your armor, and then it goes into any DRs, and then it goes into your stagger, and the rest goes into your face. For Protection Warriors, you replace the stagger with block, right? So if you have DRs up, it's going to reduce the damage coming in, and then you block some of that damage, and then the rest goes into your little gnome face. Or Tauren, or whatever, you know. We're not race shaming here. But it's weird how there's this big hubbubaloo on one of the threads you can see below, that the rage per damage taken gives you more rage over the course of an entire encounter, but it always is like slow, trickle-ish kind of rage. But it is weird how as you gain more and more HP, you do kind of lose the rage to face amount. But blocking is of course really important because a tank's job is to smooth incoming damage. And that's how you use it. With Ignore Pain, however, so shield blocking is you raise your shield and you block every melee attack for the next 6 seconds. These blocks, of course, can be critical blocks, and then when Shield Slam is increased by 30% damage while your block is up. That's just the glyph that was rolled into the baseline ability. So Shield Block is obviously, like, you're going to be using it a lot, right? It's a charge system reduced by haste, whereas Ignore Pain just costs more rage with a 1-second cooldown, just for you can't just spam stack it, right? You can stack it, because there is a maximum HP amount that you can put into your shield against like 40-ish% of your max HP. So the more HP you gain, the more Ignore Pain you get. The difference here is that Ignore Pain is not shield barrier, but is also like not powered shield. It just technically counts as your HP. So your Ignore Pain shields, however, you don't take that damage, but you'll still gain the rage from taking that damage into your Ignore Pain shield. So back and forth on these threads and for testing, there's like this weird amount of like that Ignore Pain is so much more important than Shield Block because Shield Block will reduce the rage taken to your face, whereas Ignore Pain makes you not take the damage but you still gain the rage from it. So again, I can't really go into too much of this because it'll take way too long in this video, but check out the video description box below for more about Ignore Pain and damage per or rage per damage taken and all this stuff because it's a big contentious point, I understand. Next you have Deep Wounds. Your Devastate and Revenge, no longer Thunderclap, also cause bleed damage over 15 seconds. It's a lot of damage. It's a ton of damage for Protection Warriors, but it's just consistent, slow, attack power-based damage. As far as I know, it's attack power-based. So as you gain more Mastery, you'll gain more Deep Wounds. It's just constant damage. Those are only 2 major passives outside of Talents, which you can get quite a number of them in. Victory Rush is still here. Unlike the War Machine proc talent with Fury Warriors, Victory Rush is still the killing blow must be landed to gain the Victory Rush amount, which is the extra damage plus the 30% maximum health. As I bring this up now, Protection Warriors have no self-healing. I'll jump over to a talent real quick here that you can take Impending Victory, which is like a super form of Victory Rush. It replaces it with a 30-second cooldown rather for 10 rage. And it's a 15% max health heal. And then if you kill an enemy that wields Experience or Honor, it resets the cooldown, whereas Victory Rush is 30% maximum health with no cooldown, but you have to land killing blows. But Impending Victory is not that great, and you can kind of look at Ignore Pain as self-healing because you just don't take the damage, but again, you still gain the rage for it. So it's a little weird back and forth that there's no self-healing anymore, there's no enraged regeneration, there's nothing. But Protection Warriors can really stop incoming damage. Like, if I go over here to this raid dummy, and I just use my rotation, you can live for like 30 seconds without dying. And this is a 113 raid boss. I have to use all your cooldowns, sure, like Shield Wall and Demoralizing Shout and whatever, you know, just stay alive. But that just shows you that, like, a raid boss, I mean, the target dummy only has auto attacks and increasing damage and that Uber Strike magic effect. But that still shows that, like, the Prot Warrior could just live for a very long time without taking heals. So they're kind of in this weird middle ground. Both Protection Warriors and what I understand Protection Paladins, they both have, like, well, Prot Paladins have a little bit more self-healing, I suppose. But Prot Warriors just are very, very much about stopping damage coming in and or ignoring it and then being, you know, topped off as they go. So it's a little bit different than like a Blood Death Knight that just takes damage and then heals it back up, right? Or a Brewmaster Monk that takes lower amount of damage but keeps taking damage over a long period of time because of stagger. So alright, what else we got here? We have Thunderclap, which looks amazing, by the way. That's the new Thunderclap animation. And that's a dog. Thunderclap looks so good. Boom. And it can look even better with a talent. Thunderclap is fantastic compared to how it used to be. The problem with Thunderclap is that there's no AoE radius on like how far it goes. It's kind of hard to determine how wide the range is because there's no like out circle. There's no circle that's showing anything. Obviously you still have Taunt. Spell Reflection has been changed to a 25-second cooldown where you raise your shield. If you don't actually have a shield equipped, you get like the PvP shield. It's kind of cool. Where you reflect the next spell that is directed at you, and you also reduce all magical damage you take by 30% for 5 seconds. So if you use Spell Reflect up when there's like AoE, or just rampant magic damage happening, you'll just take less damage from that. But if you reflect a spell, then of course it goes away. But you can't really reflect boss spells all the time normally. It just doesn't always happen. So, we'll see. Shield Wall is a 40% reduction in damage taken for 8 seconds. I like how the shields float around you. I don't like how they swing out and then swing in and out. It's kind of weird, but 4 mana cooldown reduces all damage taken. Went over Shield Block already. Went over Ignore Pain. You have Shield Slam. I'm going to start showing off some animations here, so you're going to see some artifact perks, but we'll get into those shortly. You do have Shield Slam, of course, which is a cooldown reduced by haste. It does a ton of physical damage, generates rage. I'm gonna get Intercept in here real quick. If you don't know yet that Charge and Intervene are both gone, they're rolled in the same ability. So Intercept now is a 15-second recharge. We run high speed toward an ally or enemy. Toward an enemy, you'll intercept them and root them for 1.5 seconds. Has a minimum range of 8 yards for an enemy then. Woo! But for an ally, you intercept them, the next melee or ranged attack against the ally within 10 seconds. While you're within 10 yards, you will then absorb that attack. And charging, of course, makes you take, that's a talent we'll still go into later, or the perk, rather. But you gain 20 rage for using Intercept. Woo! But yeah, there's Shield Slam. Then we have Revenge, which is still here. It generates 5 rage. It's a cooldown reduced by haste as well. Revenge is interesting because it's a non-target necessary AoE. There's no animation. I put it as a slight bug report that there should be like kind of like a sweeping like animation or a graphic to show you the range of it. Because it's a 120-degree cone and it's 8 yards in front of your face. But it's hard to like notice that because look how far, I mean, I'm a gnome and look, you know, animations are kind of weird on me because I'm short and tiny. But it's weird to know that you don't really see how wide the arc is unless you just know how wide it is. So I kind of hope they put a little bit more animation behind that. Also, a successful dodge or parry resets the cooldown of Revenge only up to once per 3 seconds, however. So you get more revenges, but Revenge and Shield Slam are your ways to gain rage. Still have, of course, your Pummel, which is your Interrupt. Last Stand is a 30% increase in HP. 60% comes from a artifact perk. But Last Stand, it turns you blue when you put the buff up. It's kind of neat. But it's 30% HP by default, not 60. Heroic Throw is just you throw your weapon at the enemy, dealing physical damage, generating high threat. It's your ranged pulling ability. Heroic Leap is a 45-second cooldown baseline, but it is reduced by an artifact perk here. It's just your leap. Does some physical damage when you land. And also, if you two enemies hit within 8 yards and resetting the remaining cooldown on Taunt, that's a new thing for Prot. You get to, if you Heroic Leap, you can taunt immediately after you land. Devastate, as you saw there, is a no cooldown spammable ability that just does physical damage, and a 30% chance to reset the remaining cooldown on Shield Slam. You saw it right down there at the bottom. So as you rotate through Devastates in your rotation, you get more Shield Slams to generate more rage. So, pretty simple, and your rotation overall is not incredibly detailed for protection. But again, you're a tank, you're supposed to care a lot about living and not taking damage. There's the shield block animation. Here's Ignore Pain. It's just like a little yell. Just like a little jump for the gnome. But you can stack it up, obviously, multiple times. And the shield amount is based on your HP. The shield value per cast is based on your attack power. And the overall shielding amount is based on your max HP. Focused Rage is basically Heroic Strike, where you focus 30 rage into an attack power buff that lasts for 30 seconds into your next Shield Slam, off the global cooldown, and you can put up to 3 focused rages in a Shield Slam. It's a rage dump for when you're not tanking. It's a rage dump for more damage. I did stack a bunch of cooldowns with a guaranteed crit Shield Slam and almost hit for 1 million damage, which is, like, neat. But you only have, like, 4 or 5 damage sources as a prop paladin anyway, so a lot of your damage is, of course, in Shield Slam. Even more so, of course, in your passive Deep Wounds. But that's Focused Rage. It's not really good for when you're actually tanking, unless you take a certain talent build, which I'll go into later, which may or may not be the really good way to tank as a prot warrior. But we'll see when you get there. Demoralizing Shout. Let me take off my weapon real quick here, because it has extra stuff from it. Demoralizing Shout's a 90-second cooldown that demoralizes all enemies within 10 yards, reducing the damage they do to you by 20% for 8 seconds. So they reduce the damage dealt to the warrior for the duration. It's sort of like a reverse weaker shield wall. Obviously good for AoE tanking or whatnot. You can stack, obviously, Demo Shout and Shield Wall at the same time for more DR. Berserker's Rage for the Protection Warrior is a 1-minute cooldown that removes and grants immunity to fear, sap, and incapacitating effects for 6 seconds. Nothing else with Berserker's Rage unless there are talents that do anything to it, which we can go into later. And then Battle Cry, or Recklessness, is just your 1-minute DPS cooldown. All 3 warrior specs have this. You lose a Battle Cry, give yourself a 100% crit. No, you do not gain parry for this. You do gain parry for critical strike rating, but you do not gain parry for... Hello, mage friend. You do not gain parry for the Warcry bonus, as it gives you critical strike chance, not rating. Rating gives you parry. Strength and crit give you parry. Just as a side, you have 5% dodge baseline, which you will never get more dodge of, unless, of course, you get a dodge trinket of some sort, because you don't have any agility on your gear, so you get parry from strength. Dodge is an agility class thing. You are a strength class thing. Again, this is if you were wondering about, this is an add-on. The link for the add-on is below in the description box. It is called Deja's Character Stats. It's an upgraded version of the stat sheet in Legion currently, as the base one is kind of poop. But that's all your baseline abilities, which is pretty straightforward. I mean, you have a... Whoops, that's the wrong button. You do have, a pretty simple DPS rotation. You can keep Thunderclap up for extra AoE damage. You spam your Devastates. You hit your Shield Slams. And you block things, and you ignore pain stuff, and then you rotate your cooldowns when you needed. So, it's really simple. I mean, all the tank DPS rotations, to be quite honest, are very simple overall, because your main job is to live, is to tank stuff. Granted, as we went over on the VOD, like, for probably an hour as well, tanks as like a 70-30 split, in my opinion, on 70% of your mental function and play is all about moving the boss, raid coordination, cooldown usage, surviving things, smoothing damage out, and then 30% about it is about DPS. DPS is obviously important for tanks, but it's not your number one concern until you start farming a boss, or you're like 120 pulls into progression and you know what you're doing. Then you can kind of min-max your DPS, because how many of you have had that, like, less than 2% wipe? That could come from your tank, okay? Or your healers in Legion, technically. But alright, so what do you get from your Scale of the Earth Warder and your Scale Shod, which is your offhand? For some reason, the shield breaks in the character sheet, so I'm going to zoom down here real quick. The actual scale, it's the Scale of Neltharion, the Earth Warder. The purple part is the actual scale, as you see here, and the adornments are on top. It's a Vrykruel shield. You actually get this shield from, his name is Magnar, but the sword is just a Vrykruel sword that they've made to go with it, but the shield is, as you see, it's an actual, turn on, gnome. It's an actual scale of Neltharion, and the adornments, of course, that have been inlaid into it. But you gain an ability called Neltharion's Fury, which is a channeled 3-second duration, 45-second cooldown defensive posture, where you critically block all attacks while a stream of Shadow Flame erupts from the scale, dealing a whole bunch of damage, over 500,000 damage. That's like a Blade Storm, really. Shadow Flame over 3 seconds to all enemies in front of you, and you can use defensive abilities while this is active. So if you want to see here real quick, you can build up some rage, and then while you put up your shield, you can still ignore pain. It makes the animation weird. It does. It's kind of goofy. If you shield block, I don't think you actually move the animation too much, but it's a ton of damage, and during that 3-second window, you will critically block all incoming attacks. So that'll be like 2 attacks, basically, or maybe like 1 and a special attack, possibly. And a critical block, remember, is a 60% reduction in incoming damage, whereas a block is a 30%. But it's a ton of damage. It is a DPS button before a defensive button, I was told, in a way. Whereas if you need to save it for defensive, you will within reason, but it does a lot of your damage, so you don't want to waste too much time holding onto it for a defensive purpose when you could use it for a offensive purpose. Let's grab some rage here and do it again. And then we shield block. Yeah, you just go like brap. But that's not as bad. But it's still a little weird that your animation does make the shield raising strange. And the size of like the little dragon face right down there is of course determined by, of course, your size of your shield. So as a gnome, it's a small dragon face. What else we got here for your shield? Actually, let me go over here to the raid tanking dummy. I'm going to try to live as long as I can. A couple of passes will proc, but then you'll see what they look like when I start talking about them. Let's go see how long I can live over here real quick. Put up Ignore Pain and Ignore Pain again. We'll put up a shield block. And we'll just kind of keep living against this guy and see how long we can not die. I don't have the perfect talent layout to not die against this mob forever. But you will eventually see how much ridiculous time you can stay alive against a raid boss without getting any heals. There we go. I'm gonna put a shield wall real quick here and put up a block inside of it. Yeah, we're getting a little low on that HP. We'll put up 2 Ignore Pains. You see the Ignore Pain shield on the default UI pop up there. Put up a block, because I was gonna put up a Uber Strike into that. But this is a long time, and I'm still not dead. Put up Ignore Pain real quick here. We'll put up a, oh gosh. And bonk. I'm not dead. We did it, team. How long was that? Probably like 30 seconds or so? At least, if not longer. But you can see how, I just popped Avatar because it looked neat. It's just for DPS. But it's a long time that you can live as a prot warrior. And this is a 113 boss dummy. There's no other weird mechanics happening here. It's just auto attacks, and then every time the boss dummy uber strikes you for shadow damage, it gains 5% more damage. So it scales and gets stronger and stronger. But that was a while. The protection warriors are incredibly self-resilient overall. But yeah, you have to be. You have no self-healing. So, all right, passives on your Scale of the Earth Warder here. You start down here at Neltharian's Fury. You gain Strength of the Earth Aspect, 15% more damage on Devastate. All right. The first path you'll probably be taking as a protection warrior I will go over first. Rage of the Fallen is 10% more damage on Revenge. Okay. Vrykruel Shield Trading is 10% more armor. Currently we have just about 5,000 armor right now, which is just over 40% damage reduction from physical attacks. Toughness, 10% more stamina, which is good for a multiple of reasons. Will to Survive is the 30% additional health from Last Stand, which we saw earlier. The 60% HP in total because it's additive. Rumbling Voice is the radius and duration of Demoralizing Shout is increased by 50%. So now Demo Shout is a 12-second duration and is a 15-yard radius. It's crazy. It's like, it makes Demo Shout really good. And what also makes Demo Shout even more good is Might of the Vrykruel, which is Shield Slam and Revenge generate 50% increased rage during Demo Shout. So if I just walk over here, no charge, and like, hey, what's up? And then I Demo Shout, watch the rage. Just from these attacks. Of course, it depends on if you get a reset there. But you're getting 22 rage per Shield Slam during Demo. And 7 rage per... Look at that. 75 rage generated in 12 seconds. The reason why you'd probably be going this path, that's not incredibly impressive, but of course rage is really important for the protection warrior, is that this side of the artifact has like the best passives. The extra armor is really good. The extra health from Last Stand is really good. The basic extra health is really good. And the duration and radius of Demo Shout is also really powerful. But that's Might of the Vrykruel. Over this side, you have Shatter the Bones, which increases the critical strike chance of Shield Slam by 15% during Shield Block. So I have 50% crit now. If I put up a Shield Block, I would have a 30% crit on Shield Slam, which is a lot of your damage. Intolerance is 30, not percent, but 30 maximum rage. That does scale with the passive of Expanded Mind. Expansive, sorry. You get 5% more rage. So you actually get 136, I want to say. Yeah, 136 maximum rage as a gnome, which is like, okay, it's not like amazing, but it's more rage if you want to pool a little bit more. You also gain Thunder Crash, Thunder Clalalot, which increases the damage dealt by Thunderclap by 30%. You have Dragon Skin, which is 6% more total damage ignored by Ignore Pain. Again, I can't really go into Ignore Pain too much because it's just ridiculous, but what that means is that the amount of attack power coefficient for each shield is higher per cast. It doesn't affect the overall shield amount of your HP. That's based on your HP, of course. But again, check the video description box for those threads. There's so much more math about Ignore Pain, it's insane. Reflective Plating is very good. Spell Reflect now reflects an unlimited number of spells during its duration and generates 10 rage each time it reflects a spell. Again, what that does help, though, is that during Spell Reflect, if you reflect a spell, it won't take away the 30% overall damage reduction. So your 30% damage reduction keeps going for the whole duration now. So you just basically have Shield Block as a 30% reduction in all magic damage taken from a dot, from an AoE, from a breath, whatever. It's really good. Next, you have Wall of Steel. When you target an ally with Intercept, it redirects 2 additional attacks. That's 3 overall attacks reduced. And the damage you take from those attacks is reduced by 20%, which is really good. So you'll see here if I intercept someone, they have the Safeguard buff is from a talent, which is even more important, but they have attacks, ranged or melee, that have been changed over or targeted now to you. You get to remain within 10 yards of the person, remember. Leaping Giants is 6 seconds off your heroic leap. You saw that earlier. And your last 2 passes, which I think you saw Dragon Scales proc over there. Let's go again. I'll show you Dragon Scales. If it wants to proc real quick. Dragon Scales, please. There it goes. When you block an attack, you get this Dragon Scale proc. Okay? Blocking an attack has a chance to increase the total damage ignored by your next Ignore Pain by 60%. Which, by 1 cast right now, it went to 164,000 per that 1 cast, and generates 30 rage when it procs. A lot of these proc-based ones are like a 0.7 RPPM, so a little less than once per minute, but it's a ton of extra rage and a huge Ignore Pain shield when that happens, and of course it is a little bit of a timer there, so you can delay it a little bit if you need to. And then you have Scales of Earth, which critical blocks, I have a chance to cause an eruption from the Scale of the Earth Warder, increasing your armor by 30% and dealing a bunch of physical damage to all enemies in front of you. The armor bonus is kind of hard to see. It's only a 30% increase for 3 seconds. Let me put up this and see if I can block an attack. There it goes. Armor increased by 30%. I critical blocked twice there in a row. So basically all that really does... it's a 4-second duration, actually, with the 0 counter, is that the Scales of Earth really just helps the Neltharian's Fury be a better cooldown, because as you are critically blocking, you gain the extra armor, because you always critically block during Neltharian's Fury, so, which is pretty nice, but if you critically block randomly, of course, it will happen. It might have an internal cooldown, so it can't keep proccing back and forth, but I think it's still roughly, it may proc twice there back-to-back, so it would have a different bit of an RPPM system that I'm not aware of. But that's Scales of Earth, and that is your artifact. Again, I think this side, as I was told, the left side is your better bet because of the armor, HP, huge will to survive on your last stand, as well as the rumbling voice, plus might of the Vrykul is very good. I think I'll probably go and get Dragon Scales and then finish it off with Scales of Earth, because this is really good. Reflective Plating is very strong. Very, very strong. Alright, let's jump out of combat real quick here and go over talents. Some talents we'll go over, some talents we'll go over are very self-explanatory, not much to show off, but you know what Shockwave does. It's Shockwave. Shockwave and Stormbolt have been redesigned. Stormbolt also does not do the quadruple extra damage or whatever nonsense like what Fury had. Stormbolt is your range stun. Shockwave is your AoE stun that will be reduced in cooldown if you hit 3 targets, which it didn't hit 3 targets for some reason. This one just too far away, I guess. Whoops. And then Warbringer makes your Intercept, when you use it offensively, deal damage to all enemies within 5 yards of the target and stuns them for 1.5 seconds. So, I'll show it off when it comes back off cooldown here, but it makes your, when you land with your charge, your Intercept portion, you'll do like a Shockwave effect when you land there. You saw Safeguard here, which is intercepting intercepting a friendly target now causes 20% of the damage taken to transfer to you for 6 seconds. So, it's kind of a weird thing, due to the fact that Wall of Steel is that it redirects 2 additional attacks to you. And the target, and the damage you take from those attacks is reduced by 20%. So Safeguard stacks with that. But what this means is that if you safeguard someone and there are like dots or AoE going out, you'll cause them to take 20% less damage from those attacks, and you'll take the damage. And then that damage will be reduced by 20% again because of Wall of Steel. But the supercharged intercept with Safeguard Intervene is incredibly good for like saving someone that's soaking in a mechanic or hitting your off tank, for example. It's really good. Here's the Warbringer charge. It's just a shockwave effect when you get there, or a thunderclap rather. Not a shockwave effect, but it sort of is. It's an AoE stun. I guess I didn't misspeak there. But there you go. There's the stun on these guys. It will stun the boss mob, obviously. Inspiring Presence does not inspire yourself. It's a 3% leech bonus that does not stack with leech. But if you see here real quick, it's healing the dummies because they keep getting healed and doing damage to themselves. So you inspire allies within 60 yards, causing them to be healed for 3% of the damage they deal. Really good for raids, really good for probably Mythic Keystone dungeons, whereas Safeguard might be good to help your co-tank out. What's scary about Safeguard is this also, because it redirects the damage so fast. That's the Safeguard pop-up shield up there for the, and then you die, of course, because the damage being taken by the target dummies is a bit of a much. I mean, that was a lot of chaos damage, which is a little bit crazy. But that's what Safeguard does. And then, of course, I went over Impending Victory earlier today, that it's a heal on demand, but it's just like, I'd rather have a presence that inspires my entire raid or group, or have another cooldown for another person in my group or my co-tank, for example. Avatar is just DPS, 90-second cooldown, 20% increased damage, and removes all roots and snares for 20 seconds. Renewed Fury is also DPS, where its Ignore Pain also will enrage you, causing you to do 10% increased damage for the next 6 seconds. You see right here? There's the enrage effect. So it's just extra, because Prot Warriors have that enrage effect right now, I believe, but it's just like enrage, where now it's part of Ignore Pain, because you're going to be using Ignore Pain a lot as a Prot Warrior, so you almost get 10% more damage done all the time. Let's say mostly it's still a damage effect. And then Ultimatum is your Shield Slam critical strikes cause the next focused rage to cost no rage. So Ultimatum is a DPS ability by default. Critical Shield Slam hits, so that's just DPS. Make your next Focused Rage cost no rage. And again, Focused Rage is just putting damage into your next Shield Slam. However, we'll jump ahead a little bit because Ultimatum and Vengeance pair well together if you want to go this route. So Vengeance is Ignore Pain, reduces the rage cost of your next Focused Rage by 50%. And Focused Rage reduces the rage cost of your next Ignore Pain by 50%. So if you start getting this chain, I'm going to pop Warcry and a Shield Slam here. So you get a free Ignore, I get a free Focused Rage. I have a Vengeance proc, so my next Ignore Pain is cheaper. Because I procced Ignore Pain, my next Focused Rage is cheaper. And then, of course, as you keep building Rage, you'll see that your next, it just keeps going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Casting Ignore Pain off the global makes your next Focused Rage cheap. Focused Rage makes your next Ignore Pain, and Ignore Pain makes your next Focused Rage. There's some Frost Mage shenanigans going on here. But it's good. Ignore Pain is so good. Ultimatum, Vengeance is a possibility. But there are other ways you could spec, right? Of course there are. But if you like this back and forth with like weaving in your reduced rage cost Ignore Pains, because you're reduced rage cost Focused Rage, or you're getting Shield Slam critical strikes. There was a back and forth in chat about like crit being a better stat for Protection Warriors, not haste. But with haste, you get a lower global cooldown. You can spam more Devastates. You can reset more Shield Slam, which gives you more rage, right? You can recharge Revenge faster, even if it's being refreshed by dodges and parries. So even if Ultimatum Vengeance gives you more possibilities for cheaper rage use and free Focused Rages for cheaper Ignore Pains, it doesn't like stacking crit to enable this spec is just taking away from stacking haste, which makes the spec just smoother and faster overall. So that might come down to numbers tuning or come down to personal preference or whatever have you. But that's a weird back and forth between Ultimatum and Vengeance. Up to you. Obviously just up to you. Warlord's Challenge is while Berserker Rage is active, you may use Taunt with no cooldown, and taunted enemies move 50% faster towards you. I'll go show this off real quick over here on these. I've never gone back here before in a video. So here is a taunt on this River Beast, right? Okay, pretty slow, obviously, right? We're gonna rock this guy's world real quick here. Yeah, he's dead. Now if I pop Berserker's Rage and taunt this other River Beast, let me get max range here. It's just kind of like, sadly, it's like Monk Taunt. That's all it really is Monk Taunt. But, I mean, it's not bad. It's good, right? Obviously. Monk Taunt is potentially really powerful for certain situations. Just depends on, you know, what you need the movement speed for. It helps mobs come over to the tank faster. But your other choices here are Bounding Stride, which reduces the cooldown on Heroic Leap by 15 more seconds, which makes the cooldown really short. You've got, where's Heroic Leap? Oh my goodness. 24-second cooldown, and you also get the 70% movement speed. Or you have Crackling Thunder, which increases the radius of Thunderclap by 100%. So, you know I said earlier that Thunderclap looks awesome? Which is, it's true. Thunderclap looks amazing. Now, though, that extra lightning effect is so satisfying. And of course, it's 16 yards now, not 8. Right? 16 yards, I do believe. Thunderclap is 16 yards, yep. It's a huge radius. It's 16 yards about here, I think, behind these guards. For those. Yeah. Ish, about here, maybe a little farther back. I don't even know. It's a large radius. Yeah, still, look at that. That's crazy. Really good. I like Crackling Thunder, mostly because it just looks great, but because it has a ton of potential for, obviously, more AoE. But this is AoE, and then movement speed reduction on mobs for kiting, for example, or more AoE damage for you in a larger radius. Bounding Stride, of course, is a more Heroic Leap. So remember, Heroic Leap reduces the, or resets the cooldown on Taunt. So if you taunt and Heroic Leap, you get Taunt again. So that's also a potential you have there. And then Warlord's Challenge is the, basically Monk Taunt during Berserker's Rage. Best Served Cold is just Revenge, generates 2 additional rage when each target is hit. You saw right there, I gained 6 extra rage from Best Served Cold, which can be obviously really good for AoE tanking, because you'll get more rage for hitting more mobs. And that means more Ignore Pains and more shield blocks for AoE tanking. That's totally fine. Up to you. Choices there, but again, I can't go into too much detail about Never Surrender and Ignominable other than like what the basic here. I was told over and over again that Never Surrender is the better of these two talents. Never Surrender makes Ignore Pain ignore up to 100% more damage based on missing health. Short terms, it means the lower your HP, the larger your Ignore Pain shields are. Indomitable, however, gives you 25% increased maximum health, which, going back to like half an hour ago, damage to rage, or rage to damage taken. I always say damage first, because damage to rage gained is not what you're supposed to say. The more HP you have, essentially the less rage you gain from taking damage. Because for a mob to deal 2% of your HP for 1%, for 1 point of rage gained, that takes more of your HP pool, right? But it also increases the maximum effect of Ignore Pain by 25%. This means that Ignore Pain's shield can be higher. The effect of Ignore Pain, each shield is just 25% stronger. So the, like, really simple math on this is that if you were getting chunked by bosses and you're being reduced to like 40% HP, 60% HP, 50% HP a lot, big, large, damaging hits, Never Surrender is better. Because the lower your HP, the stronger your Ignore Pain shield. When I was testing, what I found out is that you need to be about 55% HP or lower for Never Surrender's maximum shield amount, if you were to stack them all the way up, to be better than Indomitable. Because not only does Indomitable give you more max HP, and your max amount of Ignore Pain shield is based upon your max HP, but also because the base amount of your Ignore Pain shield is 25% stronger, if you are taking smoother, less damage, or there's more spell damage going on, that you want to ignore at a more consistent rate, Indomitable is better, because you need to actually be taking large hits to actually make Never Surrender work. If you're at like 80% plus HP or 70% plus HP all the time during a boss fight, Never Surrender is worthless in that scenario, because you're not gaining anything from it. A little bit, but Indomitable is more effective at higher or smoother HP pools. Never Surrender is good, like if a boss chunks you for half of your health, and you put up 2 Ignore Pains. Like, you know, a boss attack, like a Mythic Archimond, right? Or a Mythic Manaroth, like the Glaive combo, I should say. Mythic Archimond would be like the Laser Beam in Phase 3, right? Like, you're getting chunked, you Ignore Pain. It gives your healers time to catch up to heal you, because it's a larger shield based on your missing HP. Or the Glaive combo. Getting Wombo comboed for almost all your HP pool. Once, like, part of it hits you and chunks you for 40%, you Ignore Pain. Huge shield for helping your healers. The next chunk hits you, cuts off your Ignore Pain, lowers your HP even more. You hit Ignore Pain again, even larger shield, you know what I mean? But again, the description box for those forum threads, there's tons of stuff down there for math about these two talents. They buffed Indomitable to be better because Never Surrender was so much better overall, but that's up to you. I like Indomitable better. I'd rather take and have a stronger upfront defensive and smooth my damage out more consistently than having a reliable, like, oh crap, I almost died, here's my Ignore Pain shield that actually matters now. So, up to you. Into the Fray is 3% haste for each enemy within 5 yards up to 5 enemies. 10 yards up to 5 enemies, not 15 or 5 or numbers. So 3% haste per enemy within 10 yards. It's a 4 right here, I think? No, too far away. So 15% haste if you have 5 enemies around you. And again, haste reduces the cooldown of Shield Slam, gives you a lower GCD. If you get to 50% haste, you have a 1-second global. It takes 50% haste to go to a 1-second global cooldown on the Prot Warrior, because you are normally a 1.5-second global cooldown. But makes the rotation quicker, smoother, gives you more abilities to put into GCDs, generates more rage, right? Because haste is a really good stat. The other option here is Booming Voice, which I think is fantastic. Booming Voice is a demoralizing shout, also generates 50 rage on cast, and increases the damage you deal to affected targets by 20%. Now, it's mostly a DPS ability to some degree, but you can do a little bit of shenanigans. So remember how the effect from your artifact, the Might of the Vrykul, gives you more rage as you have Demoralizing Shout up, and then it also lasts longer? So you can do weird stuff like this for a boss. You can be at full rage, you can dunk, Ignore Pain shields, you can roar, Demoralizing Shout rather, not a Demoralizing Roar. And then you get so much more, and you can just keep rolling with Ignore Pain shields. Put a shield block in there, why not? So it makes Demo Shout not only a slight DPS increase, but also even more of a defensive one. Because you can gain rage immediately, gain rage faster because of your artifact, and then get more defensives in the form of shield block is only 10 rage, but still, you have the rage for it, and just tons of Ignore Pain shields. You can just chain those bad boys together. Or, when you're about to taunt swap, you can make sure you have a fully stacked Ignore Pain shield, which takes between 3 to 5 casts based on your HP pool. And you can have a huge shield ready to go. So Booming Voice is a possibility. It's like I said, booming voice. Booming voice. I'm kind of stuffed up today if you haven't noticed. Just still allergies now and... crap. And it's just getting rainy again in Florida, so now it just gets all sniffly. Anger management I've had this whole time is every 10 rage you spend reduces the remaining cooldown of Battle Cry, Last Stand, and Shield Wall by 1 second. It's a good passive if you just want more cooldowns. It's fine, but it's gonna be it's just an easy passive, right? The next other two talents are better. So you have Ravager. 1 minute cooldown, throws a whirling weapon at the target location. It actually is your weapon now, finally. It does damage over 10 yards, or sorry, 6 yards over 10 seconds. These numbers, though. It increases your parry chance by 30% while active. So it's AoE scumbagging to a degree, but you also gain a ton of extra parry. Remember, parries, Refresh Revenge, gives you more rage. Also, parries you take no damage. It's a side note right there. Remember, if you take no damage from a boss missing you for some reason, or you dodge or parry an attack, you gain no rage. So it's a back and forth, but if you parry an attack, you gain a refresh on revenge to gain you some rage anyway. Because by default, revenge at least gives you 5 rage. Which, unless a boss hits you for over 10% of your HP in one attack, that won't even give you 10 rage, based on the 2% HP pool to 1 rage point gained. So, it's still better to parry an attack that might hit you for 3 or 4% of your max HP or whatever have you, or more, but you also get a guaranteed revenge. Every 3 seconds if you're parrying, right? So, it does help though, obviously. And then you have heavy repercussions, which is probably going to be the better set and forget depending on what you like to do as a prot warrior or how you feel. Shield Slam extends the duration of shield block by 1.5 seconds, and shield block increases the damage of your shield slam by an additional 30%. So by default, shield block is 6 seconds. This will make it go to a 7.5 or even a 9. You can keep putting shield slams into a shield block and keep refreshing it. So if I try right now, shield block, and I'll slam. I'll try to get a refresh here. I'll slam. It goes back up again. Try to refresh here. Try to refresh here. Try to refresh here. Oh, no. I'll try again. Wait for it to come off cooldown here. Boop, and bam. Obviously, it's more damage as well, which is good. To have a little more damage, we'll refresh again. So I mean, like, you can keep rolling that shield block even further. And because you add, 1.5 to 3 seconds of duration into each shield block, then it gives you more time to let your other shield block charges recharge, because it's always a continuous recharge system. So, and again, haste into the fray would make that recharge faster. So, obviously, you can only shield, and there's so many things happening here. So, if the more uptime for shield block means that Dragon Scales can proc more often, right? Or has a more guaranteed chance to proc because you're blocking more often, even though it's still like a lower, RPPM system. But uptime is good. And also, the more uptime you have on blocking, the more chance you have to critically block for Scales of the Earth to proc, which is the 30% additional armor for 4 seconds and then extra damage. So, being incredibly defensive, at least in a differently offensive way as the prot warrior works, and that's how all the tanks kind of work right now too, is that your offensive rotation helps you be defensive. That's just how it works. That's how it happens, right? Like, if you are properly doing your DPS rotation, as simple as it may be, you are reducing the damage you take. Because you're generating rage, you're generating procs, you're hoping for little RNG moments here and there you can react to increase your damage reduction over the course of a fight. And that's how all tanks should play. Like, you should want to and care about your damage to a degree, but doing damage properly gives you more defensive bonuses. And that's the Protection Warrior in a nutshell. I'm gonna do the nonsense to show you guys the huge shield slam, just for fun here real quick. So let me get Avatar, and that's everything, right? Avatar, and I could take Ultimatum, I guess, or Vengeance, but it doesn't really matter too much. Booming Voice, and heavy repercussions. All right, so here's the nonsense, right, for the burst damage. Let me get up my rage. I need to build up rage to put a whole bunch of damage into focused rage here. But let me do some charges so I can get some rage faster. Oh. That happens sometimes right now. That's a bug that you sometimes try to intercept something and, like, it doesn't actually work. Which is really weird. It's a little bit strange, but I don't know how exactly it's a bug or not. So there's 2 stacks. I actually hit shield block there, or shield slam there accidentally. Alright, so shield slam is off cooldown. We're going to put up 3 stacks of focused rage. We're going to go Avatar, Roar, Block, Warcry, bam, baby, 940,000. And then put up some guaranteed crit, Neltharian's Fury. So, there's some eye candy for you. Where is it in the combat log? That's a huge hit, 940,000. That'll be over 1 million easy eventually. So, that's pretty good. Knowing when and how to correctly do damage as a tank while not dying is definitely a skill cap. But that's the Prot Warrior. I think it's my favorite tanking class, personally. Mostly because, like, I like Blood Death Knight too, but Blood DK got a little bit weird with just having so much self-healing that it feels a little bit like it devalues how important Death Strike is for the Blood DK, but Vengeance is pretty fun too. I thought Guardian Druid was okay. Brewmaster Monk is interesting, but it's definitely different. But this is the Protection Warrior. Have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Hit that like button, that thumbs up, helps me out a great deal. Video description box below for more information about the Protection Warrior via some threads on MMO Champion and some blue confirmations on the actual blue official forums. The blue forums? Well, they're blue posts on the official forums. I've been talking too long today. I will see you all in the next Legion testing video. Below, if you made it all the way through, leave me your best... leave me your best gnome jokes. Be nice, but gnome jokes below. I'll see you all in the next Legion testing video.